Hi everyone, my name is Laura Renner. I'm the founder of Freedom Makers Virtual Assistant Services, and I'm excited to be a part of this expert panel to talk about what to do with outsourcing, how to get started with outsourcing. I just want to give a thank you and a shout out to Joe for organizing this, and I'm honored that she invited me to be a part of this group, this expert panel, to share with you or tips about outsourcing, so that we can all be even more fearless and flourish even more financially. And so I'm just excited to be a part of this, and thank you for joining me today. I'll be speaking regularly about outsourcing tips and answering questions that you might have about that. And so today I'm going to talk about how to get started with outsourcing. And one of the things that might come up right away is, I can't afford it. I just can't do it. So it's hard when you're starting a business, particularly. How do you decide what to spend money on, what not to spend money on, or whatnot? And so the thing about outsourcing is you don't have to think of it as outsourcing everything, paying someone for full-time work or whatnot. Just think about one thing. What is one thing that you could let go of? And start there. An example is when I first started my business, I really hated house cleaning, and I had a little one-bedroom space, and it'd take me about 3 hours to clean my space. The reason is that the first 2 hours I would spend on Facebook putting off cleaning. And so I wasted 2 hours, but also I wasted a lot of energy beating myself up about putting off that time or the cleaning. And then finally I would get around to cleaning the house. It would take me about an hour, and I wouldn't do a very good job because I hate cleaning. So finally I started using a house cleaning service, and it was wonderful because they took about the same amount of time. They did a much better job, but also because I felt awkward just kind of sitting there while they were cleaning, I got a lot of work done. I would work while they were clean. And so by outsourcing my house cleaning, I ended up with a cleaner house, and also I got a lot of work done. And so I remember a family member asked me, is that really a valid expense while you're trying to start your business? Like, shouldn't you try to save money by cleaning the house yourself? And I said, absolutely not, because I got more work done and I had a cleaner house. And so it was worth the $50 to $100 to spend for a couple hours a month on having someone else clean my house. So that's an example of how you can outsource one little thing to just free up your energy and free up your time. Because I think as business owners, especially as solo business owners, as coaches, consultants, expertpreneurs, we have to balance time and money. And money is tangible, so we can see, if I don't do that, I save that money. And time is not as tangible. And so sometimes we forget the balance between the two. So in order to save money, we take more time. But yet our time is more valuable than money in the long run. So that's just, a quick intro about what you can do or how to get started. A little bit more about myself. Like I said, my name is Laura Renner, and I founded Freedom Makers Virtual Assistant Services. We provide U.S. military spouses as virtual assistants to small business owners. It's a win-win for everyone because the spouses, they move so much, so here they have portable yet stable work opportunities, and the small business owners can have access to support in the ways that they need it. And so with that, we work a lot with our clients on figuring out what to outsource. And so that's where a lot of my expertise comes into play, and that I'll be sharing with you guys. And so today we'll talk about how to get started. Like, what do you want, how to figure out what to outsource, because it might be that you're thinking, oh my gosh, I have so much to outsource, but I don't even know where to get started. Or you draw a blank, or somewhere in between, but you know you need help. There are two key components to figuring out where to get started. The first is, what are you comfortable letting go of? For me, people mention, or for me, the probably the last two things I would ever let go of are email and invoicing. It's just because I'm just not comfortable with how do I let someone else do that stuff. At the same time, some of our clients, that's the very first thing they outsource. So you've got to start with what you're comfortable with. The second thing is is easy to put rules around, or parameters, for lack of a better phrase. So an example might be, say you want someone else to take care of your newsletter for you. What are the rules about how should they do it? How should they get that done? What all do they need to do in order for that to work? And so the more easily you can set rules around, the easier it is to outsource that. For example, for me, when I think about outsourcing my email, the amount of rules I would have to create is overwhelming. And so I wouldn't even know where to start. So, and that is my next point. So say you want to outsource and you have an idea of what to outsource, or when you think about what you want to outsource, you're immediately overwhelmed and you're like, where do I even get started? For example, thinking about email, where would I even come up with or capture all of the rules that need to be in place in order for someone else to handle my email? Or maybe you don't even know where to start. You're like, oh, I need help, but what would I start with first? Would I start with email? Would I start with social media, my newsletter, my invoicing? Where would I even start? So if you're in that phase where you're overwhelmed or you don't even know where to start by asking yourself these 3 questions. The first question is, what do I not have time for? And so do a brain dump, okay? You don't want to judge what you're writing down. Just do a brain dump of everything, all right? If you don't want to be like, oh, I don't have time for email, but how am I going to do the rules for email, so I'm not going to write that down. Don't worry about it. Just start with a brain dump and dump everything that comes to mind about what you don't have time for. It could be house cleaning. It could be email. It could be setting your haircut appointment or your doctor's appointment. It could be your newsletter. Anything and everything that comes to mind about what you don't have time for, just jot it down. The second question to ask yourself, what do I do repeatedly that doesn't require a lot of thought? So that might be invoicing, or when you get a new client, the contract that you send to them, filling that out and sending it to the client, or any other paperwork that you need them to fill out in order to start working with you. All those different types of tasks that repeatedly occur, but that don't require a lot of thought. Do another brain dump with those. And then the last question to ask yourself is, what do I procrastinate? And when you start doing a brain dump about that as well, and there might be some repeats, and that's okay, but just start doing that brain dump. So you write everything down that comes to mind. You might have 3 things, you might have 100 things, that's okay, but it's somewhere to start with, okay? And remember, no judgment, just write everything down. So then now you have your brain dump and you've written everything down. Now you go through that list and you review it. Now you start the quote unquote judgment process and you write down or you outline what are the things that you feel comfortable with having someone else do. For example, you might not feel comfortable with someone coming into your home and cleaning it. That's okay. You might feel more comfortable with someone taking over your invoicing. That's okay too. It's all about you personally. What do you feel comfortable letting go of? And start with just one thing. If you are struggling to delegate in general, just start with just that one little thing. It might be 1 hour a month, 1 hour a week, 1 hour a quarter. Whatever it is, start with that one thing that you're comfortable with letting go of. And then also, once you have the ones you're comfortable letting go of, figure out or circle the ones that you can easily set rules around. Now, what do I mean by rules? What that means is parameters. Or, for example, let's say you want someone else to do your newsletter for you. And let's say you want the newsletter to come out on the 5th of every month, which means you need to have it ready for you to review by the 1st of every month. So that means that the person who's formatting the newsletter and putting it into the template needs to have the content by the 25th of every month. And then that gives them 5 days to get it into the newsletter for you to review. So then, assuming you're using 2 different people, one for formatting and one for writing, or maybe you're doing the writing yourself, that means you need to have the content ready by the 20th of every month. So then the person has 5 days to get the formatting done. So if let's say that you decide to use someone else to help you with writing the content. So that means you need to meet with them on the 15th of every month to outline what all you want covered in your next newsletter, or maybe you're going to do it yourself and you outline what you want. So now the person has 5 days to write everything, or that may be yourself, and then you have 5 days to go back and forth with them to edit the material, and then it gets placed into like a Dropbox or something, and on the 25th the formatter can go into the Dropbox, find the content and format it in time for you to review it on the 30th. You go back and forth with editing and it's ready to publish on the 5th. So that's what I mean by rules. Like, that is a set of rules or parameters that that helps you to have basically a system for someone else to do the work for you. And that is what we at Freedom Makers call set it and forget it systems. And that's the key thing for how to figure out what to outsource and getting started with outsourcing. So if you remember, we have 2 components. We have delegate what you're comfortable with, and then what you can easily set rules around. And the rules are part of the set it and forget it systems. So sticking with that newsletter idea, the dates create the set it and forget it system. So now you know it might be a standing meeting, or if you're doing it yourself, that on the 15th of every month is when you sit down to brainstorm or start writing the content for your next month's newsletter. So to create a set it and forget it system, there are 3 components to that. The first is triggers. So that might be, like I said, using the newsletter idea, that might be dates. Dates are the triggers for your assistants to go into action. So if you say, for example, you have a writer as an assistant, on the 15th, they know they're going into action to write your next month's newsletter. And they have until the 20th to do it. And then between the 20th and 25th, they're going back and forth with you on editing it. Then the formatter knows that on the 25th, they need to go in and start formatting or laying out the newsletter. And they have until the 30th to have a rough draft put together. And then between the 30th and the 5th, they're going to go back and forth with you on editing. So that's what I mean by triggers. Other triggers might be, we have a client who has her assistant check email 4 times a day. And so that's the trigger. She checks email 4 times a day. Now it might be that it's only 15 minutes of work because there's no action required based on the emails. Or she might end up working for an hour or 2 based on whatever actions are triggered by the email. Other cases might be that a form gets filled out by a client or a prospect, and that gets sent via email or text or something like that. So that triggers action. The second tool, or the second component of set it and forget it systems, is tools. So let's say, for example, continuing with the newsletter, that means the tools needed to create a newsletter would be the newsletter software, MailChimp, for example. Let's say the writer is going to upload the content into a Dropbox. So then the formatter needs access to that Dropbox folder. Let's say you use a stock photo site, and so the formatter needs access to your account so they can browse and find photos for the formatting or for the layout. And if you're using someone else to help with the writing or the content, then they need access to, or they need the tool, like a regularly standing meeting with you on the 15th of every month at 10 a.m. or something like that. But they need the tools to be able to reach out to you or whatnot. Another example might be if you're using an assistant or outsourcing to create your contracts for new clients. So the assistant needs access to the electronic signing software that you might use and access to the template for the contract. And then you need to work out a system for letting the assistant know the name of the new client, the billing rate, or any other information that needs to go into the contract so that they can generate the contract and get it and send it out to your new client. And the third tool or the component to a set it forget it system. So if you remember, the first tool is a trigger, the second is the tools, and the third is actions. Like, what actions do they need to take once the trigger happens? So we kind of went over that already, using the newsletter as an example about the different actions that need to happen once a trigger occurs, and they have the tools to do it. And so that's basically how to get started. How am I doing on time? Okay, right about 15 minutes. I don't know if anyone's watching. If they have questions or comments, I'm happy to answer them. Also, after we're done with the live recording, if you have questions, you can post them in the comments and I'll either respond or include that in the next session's topic. But to recap, those are the main points: are figuring out what you're comfortable with letting go of and can easily have rules around them. And then once you identified that, then coming up with the triggers, tools, and actions needed for someone else to complete the work. And we call that a set it and forget it system. That's the key thing. Like if you think about, like for me personally with email, I couldn't begin to come up with the rules. Like maybe, the triggers are easy, like check the email 4 times a day or whatnot. But what are the actions that they would need to take based on the rules? Like if it's this kind of email, what do you do with it? If it's a prospective client, what do you do with it? If it's an existing client, what do you do with it? That kind of thing. That to me is overwhelming. I can't figure out where to start with that. On the other hand, someone like a CPA, that's pretty easy for them maybe about, okay, if they're an existing client who wants a previous year's tax return, that's very easy. You just go into this folder, find it, and send it to them. Or you send it through the secure vault or whatnot. If they're a prospective client, then you send them this link to schedule a call. If they're submitting documents, then you upload them here. So it's more cut and dry in my mind for a CPA to outsource email. I have not been able to figure that out for myself, and that's okay, right? And so you figure out for yourself what you're comfortable with and what you can easily generate rules around so that you have the triggers, the tools, and the actions. I will leave it there. Do we have any questions or comments? I'm not sure how long to wait for that, but I'll go ahead and finish up here. And like I said, if you have any questions or comments, feel free to post them in the comment section and I will respond there. And I look forward to seeing you 2 weeks from now. And I hope you are enjoying this expert panel daily videos. And thanks again to Joe for putting this all together. Bye. See you next time.